Hey guys, Sarak here, and today I'm bringing you Exosister. Exosister's been on the cusp of being budget for a while, but mainly held back by Pot of Prosperity. It is still a little bit more expensive than I'd like because some cards like Magnifica have not been reprinted for a while, but let's get into the deck profile. So, 3 copies of Exosister Martha. Martha is the heart and soul of the deck. The deck was basically unplayable before Martha came out in Power of the Elements. If you control no monsters or only Exos monsters, summon this card from your hand, and if you do, special summon Exosister Ellis from your deck. So all the Exosisters name another one, and then they have a gimmick where if a cards are moved out of the graveyard, in most of them by your opponent, but for Martha's case, by either player, you can Exos using that monster as material. So Martha gets you easy access to a rank 4 by getting Ellis out of your deck, with the only cost that you can only special summon Exosister monsters for the rest of the turn, which is a very, very minor cost because your Exosister Exos monsters are very, very strong. And then it has the effect of if a card is moved out of either graveyard, special summon from your extra deck one Exosister Exos monster using this card as material. 3 copies of Exosister Ellis. If you control an Exosister monster, special summon this card from your hand. Then if you control Exosister Stella, gain 800. If your opponent moves a card out of either graveyard, see how that's different to Martha, where it said if a card is moved out of either graveyard, so this relies on your opponent using something like a Bestial or a DD Crow. You can special summon from the extra deck one Exosister Exos monster using this card as material. So, this is really nice because it can summon itself from the hand. You can obviously still summon it from the hand if you summon it from Martha, because you haven't summoned it from the hand. You can use both effects. And it's the one you get from Martha, so that's why we play 3. And it's one of the best ones to draw as well because it's a free monster. 2 copies of Exosister Sophia. If you control another Exosister monster, then you can draw 1 card. And then if you control Irene, gain 800. And then it has the standard, if your opponent moves a card out of either graveyard, Exos using it as material. So Sophia's nice because drawing cards is nice, but just be aware it has no way of special summoning itself, and also if you've used Pot of Prosperity you cannot draw cards, so you can't use Sophia's effect. 2 copies of Exosister Stella. Stella's effect, if you can summon 1 Exosister monster from your hand, then if you control Ellis, gain 800, so Stella's again really, really nice for extension, and probably the best pure normal summoned Exosister in the deck. If your opponent moves a card out of either graveyard, except during the damage step, special summon an Exosister Exos monster from your extra deck, using it as material. Then we round out our Exosisters with 1 copy of Irene, which is mainly here just as an extra name for things like when we use Exosister Vadis. It just allows us to ensure we have the paired names for all the Exosisters. It has an effect where you can put an Exosister card from your hand on the bottom of the deck and draw a card, which again is worse than Sophia and can't be used with Prosperity. And then it has the standard Exos summoning effect as well. We're playing the Spirit Package. We're playing 2 copies of Sakitama and 2 copies of Aratama. Aratama gets to search a spirit monster when it's normal summoned, and Sakitama can reveal itself in the hand to gain an extra normal summon of a spirit monster. This allows you to bypass the Exosister special summon lock because they normal summon themselves, and gives you more level 4 material to make more rank 4s, which is what this deck needs to do. For our hand traps, we play 3 Ash Blossom of Joyous Spring as the best generic hand trap to prevent searching, special summoning from the deck, and sending from the deck to the graveyard. You know what Ash Blossom does by now. We then play everyone's favourite hand trap, Dimension Shifter. If you have no cards in your graveyard, quick effect, send this card from your hand to the graveyard until the end of the next turn. Any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. So this card just wins games by itself. Just remember, you've got to have an empty graveyard. We don't use our graveyard at all outside of checking if cards are moved out of it, and that is more a nice bonus rather than the 100% core of this deck. And generally, banishing everything is more powerful than you making an extra Exos monster on their turn. So just remember, though, that this card does require you to have an empty graveyard. You cannot Pot of Prosperity into a copy of Dimension Shifter. I know, I've tried, and you look very, very silly. But other than that, it will win you games you have no business winning. 3 copies of Exosister packs. During the main phase, pay 800 and then add 1 Exosister card from your deck to your hand, except packs. Then if you added a monster by this effect, you can special summon it if the other Exosister monster mentioned on it is on your field or in your graveyard. So really, really nice. Can be extension, can be searching, can get spells, traps and monsters, and it's quick play as well. Just remember it does have a main phase restriction. 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity. This is the big reprint from Rarity Collection, of course. I bought these as a graduation present when I finished my degree. These are Blazing Vortex. Banish 3 or 6 cards of your choice from your extra deck face down. For the rest of the turn after this card resolves, any damage your opponent takes is half. Also, excavate cards from the top of your deck equal to the number of cards banished, and add 1 excavated card to your hand. Place the rest on the bottom in any order. You cannot draw cards by effect the turn you activate this card. So, this lets you dig 6 cards deep and get the best card. This lets you get much easier access to Martha. The deck has to see Martha to function. This card has been expensive for a while. It is now significantly cheaper, and I implore you, get your copies of this card. It may go to 1 shortly, but while it's at 3, then please actually use the card. Being able to dig 6 cards deep is huge, and this just getting you basically whatever you need out of those 6 cards, whether that be Martha, or more interruption, or more extension, or whatever you need, is phenomenal, and we can afford the extra deck cost. Finally, for our spells, we have 1 Call by the Grave, because Martha getting ashed is not very fun, and it just helps us play into hand traps. For our traps, we play 2 copies of Exosister Returnia. Returnia, if all monsters you control are Exosister monsters, min 1, target 1 card your opponent controls or in the graveyard, banish it, and then apply one of the following effects. Immediately after this effect resolves, Exceed summon 1 Exosister monster using monsters you control, or if you Exceed summoned already this turn, banish 1 card your opponent controls. So this gets you Grave Hate. It's a banish if you on the field, if you need that rather than Grave Hate. The Grave Hate will trigger Martha if you need to Exceed with it, or you can use it as a quick Exceed card, or if you've already Exceed, then you can use it as another banish. So this deck can quite easily set up 3 or 4 banishes in 1 turn as its main form of interaction. 1 copy of Exosister Vadis. Vadis, pay 800, choose 1 Exosister monster from your deck, and then take the other one from your deck that is mentioned on that monster and special summon both, but shuffle them into the deck during the end phase, and then it locks you into Exosister monsters from the extra deck. Really, really nice, because you can chain this to something like a Bestial activating, put 2 Exosisters on the field that then can immediately rank up because the Bestial's banish is an effect. It allows you to put names onto the field. It can be obviously used on turn 3 if you say go first, and very easily give you access to much more material to push for an OTK. It's searchable. We don't need it all the time, and it is a bit situational, but it is a useful card to have access to. For the rest of our traps, we play 3 copies of Goes and Match. Our entire deck is light, so Goes and Match is very, very easy for us to play around, and can be much harder for our opponents to play around. Very, very simple. It can just make it very difficult for our opponent to do anything. 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence as generic monster effect negation. Again, best single trap card in the game by quite a long shot, allowing you to negate anything. Good going first, good going second. Not much more to say about Imperm. And then finally for our traps, we have 3 copies of Evenly Matched as a way to deal with stuff like Rescue Ace and just a general good going second card. For our extra deck, we have 3 copies of Exosister Michaelis. So, Michaelis, 2 level 4 monsters. It's a warrior. Cannot be destroyed in battle with a monster summoned from the graveyard. You can only use each of the following effects of Michaelis once per turn. If you control this card that was Exceed summoned this turn using an Exosister monster as a material, you can target 1 card your opponent controls or in their graveyard and banish it. Detach 1 material, add 1 Exosister spell trap from your deck to your hand. So, going first, it lets you search the spell or the trap you need. Usually it's going to be searching Returnia or Pax. It can't be destroyed by battle with a monster summoned from the graveyard, and it provides a quick effect banish on your opponent's turn if it was summoned that turn, which is really, really important as an interrupt, and your general combo will use Magnifica to make Michaelis in your opponent's turn to get that summoned on their turn banish. We have 2 copies of Exosister Magnifica. This is the one of the expensive portions of the deck. This card was less than £1 on release, but has since it's not been reprinted, gone up. It requires 2 rank 4 Exosister Exceed monsters to summon. Must be Exceed summoned with the above material, so you can't overlay it onto another Exosister through their graveyard effect. This card can make a second attack during each battle phase. Once per turn, you can detach a material from this card, banish 1 card your opponent controls. As a quick effect, when your opponent activates a card or effect, return 1 Exceed monster you own attached to this card to the extra deck, then special summon that monster from your extra deck using this card as material. This is treated as an Exceed summon, and then attach any materials attached to this card to that new monster. So your standard play is to make Magnifica turn 1 and search for a copy of Returnia. You use Magnifica's banish effect, and then you use Magnifica as effect to return Michaelis to the deck, extra deck, summon out Michaelis, banish again, and then because you've now Exceed summoned, you can double banish with Returnia. So that's your standard combo play. 2 copies of Exosister Jibrin. Jibrin cannot be destroyed by activated effects of monsters summoned from the graveyard. If you control a card that was Exceed summoned this turn using an Exosister, quick effect, target 1 effect monster your opponent controls and negate its effect. You can detach 1 material from this card. The rest of the turn, all Exceed monsters you control will gain 800 attack. That applies to anything you summon afterwards, which is really important for OTKing with Magnifica, because it puts Magnifica to 3600, which puts you at a nice big 7200 damage direct off Magnifica. So if you can just find a little bit more damage, you can very easily OTK with Magnifica. And it provides effect negation as well. 2 copies of Casper. Casper cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster summoned from the graveyard. You can only use each effect once per turn. If it's Exceed summoned using an Exosister monster of material, neither player can special summon from the graveyard for the rest of the turn. Detach 1 material and add 1 Exosister monster from your deck to your hand. This is one you'll usually be making turn 1. It's a nice search, and it prevents your opponent summoning from the graveyard. Nice and simple, very effective card. The final Exosister Exceed monster is Exosister Sophia. Sophia cannot be destroyed by activated effects of monsters summoned from the graveyard. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If it's Exceed summoned using an Exosister monster as material, neither player can activate card effects in the graveyard this turn. This is your big I win button against things like Tier if you haven't hit Dimension Shifter. Making this on their turn and completely locking them out of anything else in the graveyard is really, really powerful. You can detach 1 material from this card, then target 1 monster your opponent controls and return it to the hand, so also provides you with some nice removal on your turn as well. For our generic Exceeds, we have 1 copy of Zeus as a nice board wipe. As long as we haven't used Martha effect, we can easily make Zeus. So we won't come up every game. We'll quite often send this with Prosperity, but it can come up as a panic button in a lot of cases. We then have 1 Tornado Dragon for problematic back row. Just quick effect, detach material, target a spell trap and destroy it. 1 Beusa for your, oh crap, I got hand trapped, now I can't do anything button. Just make a Beusa in defense and try again next turn. And then finally, we have the Cowboy for time, because we make a lot of rank 4s, so may as well make the Cowboy. And cowboying someone for game is very, very funny. And also, if you've made Magnifica powered up by 800, that does 7200 damage, which leaves them at 800 for Cowboy to finish them off. So that is Exosister. Exosister's a weird deck. It takes a bit of learning. The deck is not hard to play on a basic level, but there's a lot of things to keep track of, like things being removed from the graveyard, knowing when your Exosister effects start applying, when they're summoned, and so on. But it's generally quite a fun deck, and being able to banish 4 things on your opponent's turn is very, very fun. I hope you enjoyed the deck, and I will see you again soon. Thanks for watching.